A commercial airliner does not simply vanish. Not in the modern world, not in controlled airspace, not without a final cry across the radio. And yet, at 1:21 a.m., flight MH370 slipped off civilian radar as if someone flipped a switch. But it didn't explode. It turned. And what different radar systems claimed to see next would fracture the investigation for years. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur just after midnight on March 8, 2014, bound for Beijing. 239 people were on board. Families, engineers, students. The aircraft, a Boeing 777, was considered one of the safest in service. The weather was calm. For nearly 40 minutes, the flight was routine. Then came the final transmission. Good night, Malaysian 370. Minutes later, the plane's transponder stopped broadcasting. Civilian radar lost its identity and altitude. Military radar did not. And that distinction became the fault line of the mystery. The official narrative describes a deliberate deviation. After disappearing from civilian screens, Malaysian military primary radar detected an unidentified aircraft turning sharply west, crossing back over the Malay Peninsula and heading toward the Andaman Sea. Later, investigators relied on satellite handshake data from Inmarsat. Though never meant for tracking, those automated pings suggested the aircraft flew for roughly 6 more hours before heading south into the remote southern Indian Ocean. The prevailing conclusion: the plane was intentionally diverted and ultimately ran out of fuel, crashing into one of the most isolated stretches of ocean on Earth. Debris found years later along African coastlines was deemed consistent with this path. It is the accepted explanation, but it rests on interpretation. And interpretation is fragile. Civilian air traffic control depends on secondary radar, which requires a functioning transponder. When that signal vanished, controllers saw nothing. Primary military radar detects raw objects. Malaysia initially reported tracking an unidentified aircraft turning west. Later statements refined the timing, adjusted the altitude, clarified the route. Days passed before the public learned about the turn. Officials said analysis took time. Critics said a wide-body jet crossing sovereign airspace should not go unidentified for days. Vietnamese controllers believed the plane entered their airspace. Thailand acknowledged radar coverage, but said it was not actively tracking the flight. China requested data. Different systems, different returns. No single unified picture. Some radar plots suggested steady cruising. Others hinted at altitude changes. Analysts debated whether the radar contact over the Andaman Sea definitively matched MH370's size and speed. Even the Inmarsat satellite arcs were derived from Doppler shift analysis, not GPS. They created a corridor of probability thousands of miles wide. The aircraft was never seen crashing. No Mayday call was received. Despite one of the most expensive search efforts in aviation history, the main wreckage has never been found. And that absence magnifies every inconsistency. The westward turn appeared precise, aligned with navigational waypoints, suggesting deliberate human input. Investigators examined the captain's background, his home simulator, his mental state. No conclusive motive was established. Yet the possibility of intentional diversion became central. But what if the radar picture itself is flawed? Primary radar can misidentify objects. It reads reflections of radio waves, not aircraft intentions. In congested airspace, returns can overlap. Altitudes can be misinterpreted. Some experts question whether the Andaman Sea contact was definitively MH370. If the turn is uncertain, then the entire southern Indian Ocean search corridor rests on assumption. And if that assumption is wrong, the aircraft may lie somewhere no one has seriously searched. The most disturbing truth is not that the plane disappeared. It's that every tracking system told a slightly different story. Civilian radar lost it. Military radar saw a turn. Satellite data implied a southern path. Debris suggested impact far from land. No single system confirms the entire sequence from start to finish. There is always a gap. And in those gaps, darker possibilities grow. One theory argues deliberate pilot action. Communications disabled, course altered, a final flight into isolation. Another suggests catastrophic failure, fire, decompression, electrical collapse, leaving the aircraft on autopilot until fuel exhaustion. And then there are more unsettling interpretations. Speculation of interception, of withheld military data, of radar records never fully released. There is no verified evidence for these claims, but there is also no wreckage to silence them. In modern aviation, redundancy is supposed to prevent disappearance. Transponders, radar, satellites, automated reporting systems. Yet that night, each layer fell away in sequence. Transponder off. Radio silent. Civilian radar blind. Military radar uncertain. Satellite pings reduced to mathematical arcs. A systematic erasure. The official investigation closed without definitive cause. The aircraft is presumed lost in the southern Indian Ocean. Families were given conclusions, but not certainty. Because until the fuselage is found, until the flight recorders are recovered, radar remains interpretation. In a world saturated with surveillance, how does a Boeing 777 vanish without a trace? Was it deliberate? A systems failure? Or a chain of misread signals that sent searchers chasing the wrong ocean? Somewhere beneath miles of water, the truth rests in twisted metal and silent black boxes. Until it is found, we are left staring at fading radar echoes and wondering whether the sky is far less certain than we were ever told.